a nice day out today. It is, yeah. Nice weather and not too sunny. Yeah, we got some cloud cover. We thought about making this video and give some thought to it. Do you ever just feel like the world is just leaving you behind? And you're just somehow, I don't know, almost slipping through the cracks? Maybe that's a little bit dramatic. We wanted to make this video and because we know we're not the only ones, and give a voice to others who feel this way. And this is just our experience. By no means are we saying if you don't have our lifestyle, you're doing something wrong. We're not saying that at all. I think you can understand that. We're just sharing our experience. And I feel like we have a somewhat unique experience. You know, we were raised in Appalachia, raised on the old ways, so to speak. Even though we're young and we're millennials, some people would say we're even the next generation up from that. And it's disappearing before our eyes. And the older you get, the faster life goes, the faster it seems like our culture is kind of slipping out from under us. And as we're raising kids, it makes you stop and think a lot. And we want to raise them with the old ways, and sometimes it gets a little disheartening because you feel like that gets harder and harder to do because that's just not the norm anymore. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And there's tons of cultures, you know, we can only speak for ours, but there's tons of culture that is slipping away, and a culture
has slipped away
has already slipped away, and culture that has existed for generations. And as Katie said it well as we were talking about this video, things that were important to our, you know, 5th or 8th great grandma, that's important to us, and why should that not be important to us? We don't want that to slip away. So we wanted to just make a video and talk a little bit about our experience and share a voice for other people, because we know we're not the only ones feeling this way. And again, that we're not saying this is the only way of life, we're just talking about our way of life.
Yeah, I mean, I think you really summed it up good there. I definitely know when I think back, you know, recalling my own experience, even from the difference I've seen in, like, when I, you know, maybe when I was in middle school compared to now, or definitely from middle school to college, when you start thinking about being just in groups of other people, you know, that would be the most exposure you would have to different people doing different things. And, you know, there was a few kids who might say, oh, I'm going to my grandma's house, and they might describe, you know, or maybe I knew their grandma, or describe their experience at their grandma's house, and I thought, yeah, that sounds about like my experience, you know, grandma and grandpa, or maybe they're gardening and they're eating cornbread and drinking milk and eating green beans and
buttermilk,
well, it'd be buttermilk and cornbread, yeah, and that kind of thing. And not just, you know, the food ways, but all sorts of other things. You know, well, I went to church with my grandma and we sang some of these old hymns, and my grandma was teaching me how to put up corn, and just different stuff. You know, there might have been a little bit of that Appalachian culture, you know, in the lives of the kids I went to school with. Maybe so in middle school. I remember in particular one boy, he lived with his grandma, and I rode the school bus with him, and so I saw his grandma's house, you know, and you'd think like, oh, there's a garden, you know, his grandma's growing a garden. Oh, I bet he has to break some of those beans and hoe some of that corn, and we certainly did. You know, and it might even come down to, like, when we were in middle school, now maybe later, when you start thinking about maybe more like 8th or 9th grade, it might be we wanted to do something on the weekend, and it was like, you know, mom and dad would say, no, girls, you can't do something on the weekend. There's corn to hoe, there's beans to break, there's things to do. And this importance of, we want to grow a garden, because what are we going to do with it? We're going to can the food. We're going to put the food up. Why? Because that's how we got here. Our ancestors, that's what they did. They grew their own food, they put up their own food, they did for themselves, and we do that because that is definitely paying honor to them. But I like to eat good food, and I like to know where it came from, and I love to do that, and it's important to me. And you know, people would say, well, why don't you just go to the grocery store and buy a can of green beans? It's less work, and they're already there, and you can be done. And that's true, but there's none of the fun, there's none of the enjoyment in growing the food and nourishing my body with what I know to be good, wholesome food, because I'm the one that, you know, handled it from the seed to the bean to my plate, and some of those important things. I think I saw that in some of the younger years of my life. But by the time I got to high school, and especially by the time I got to college, there was kids saying, what are you talking about? What do you mean hoe a row? I'm like, oh, well, you know, and so many other things. You know, I'm thinking mostly because I'm hungry maybe about the foodways, but even other things like down to dialect and language, things I would say like, well, that's not, I wouldn't do that if I were you. That's not any count, or that's not any good. I can hear Dad up there. Hi. And people would literally be like, what are you talking about? And that's a bad example, but there's other Appalachian language aspects that they would just be clueless. And I'm like, what do you mean you never heard that? And they're like, well, I grew up in Atlanta, or I grew up in Charlotte. What are you talking about? And it pained me to see that disappearing, and it pained me that these people didn't know what I was talking about. So I'd have to stop and educate them. Well, let me tell you what this means, you know.
Absolutely. Which two things here on that. The elephant in the room, the elephant outside here. That's the whole point of our mom's channel. Most of you probably know she has a channel watching this. If you don't, we'll leave a link in the description. Her channel is Celebrating Appalachia, and that's the whole point. She, you know, she has felt this way her whole life. I'm sure when she had us, she felt kind of that
estrangement,
estrangement, but maybe a little bit more like intensity to her culture and thinking about raising her girls, which was us raising her kids. And that's the whole reason her channel exists, is to
celebrate Appalachia.
Is to celebrate Appalachia and preserve the culture, and that is the dialect and the foodways and the family and the culture and the heritage and everything, because it's so important, and it's just disappearing in the fast-paced world. And again, I know there's other cultures disappearing, but we're
talking about this one.
Speak to ours. And what you were saying about the food, there's so much more like in a jar of green beans than just the food. It's what you said, it's knowing where it came from, but it's just like the rich ancestry of growing your own food and what that means, and the survival. I mean, survival. That's what
they
I was
had to.
Say.
You know,
they had to. At this day and age, we don't technically have to, but we want to. But there were people in the not too distant past. They had to do that. Everything they did, everything they ate, every animal they had affected every bit of their survival.
And their families.
And in some ways, it's wonderful we don't have to do that these days. But convenience has absolutely...
It's rotted us and spoiled us from the inside out.
It's spoiled us in so many ways. It's taken away from culture. It's making us unhealthy. It's making us lazy.
Lazy robots is what I would say. You know,
So it's such a rich heritage and culture that we want to preserve, but sometimes it's a little bit disheartening, and I guess that's a little bit of what this video is just lamenting that it's slipping out from under us. And as we're thinking about bringing up the next generation, our boys,
what we're faced with,
how we're going to do that, and what we're faced with.
And I imagine how I feel. Well, then how does Granny feel? Well, how do these older generations that did live in that time and saw that and experienced that, you know, the generation between Granny and us really would be Mom. So Mom, of course, she saw, and Dad saw lots of these things that we're talking about, and way more of them than we did, and had more of this experience, because some of those old timers would have still been around. Their grandparents, of course, would have still been around. I remember, you know, when Pap died, it was so sad. Oh, I missed him so much. I can't talk about it. Oh, I still miss him. I miss him so much. And, you know, but I think part of his dying, it's a bittersweet thing. He was sick, you know, and he was in pain, and it was wonderful to know that he's you know, with the Lord. He's not sick and he's not in pain. But I think he was getting homesick for a time and a place that was gone, absolutely gone. I think it hurt him to look around and see what things had turned into, and what just even his own town and his own community. And that's not me dragging anything down. No. You know, and I've even made the remark, I'm glad he did pass away before COVID, before all of this crap now, if I could just be totally frank and blatant. It's just garbage, and I'm glad that he didn't have to see any of this, because I think if what was going on then hurt him, that would certainly be insult to injury. But, you know, what about that? What about Granny's point of view? And I tried to talk to Granny. I asked her the other day, I said, well, Granny, you know, we was talking about food, and she said, yeah, we did all kinds of canning. And I said, well, what about when you start thinking about animals and meat? And I said, well, what about milk? What did y'all do for milk? Did you have a dairy cow? And she said, well, for a little while we had a dairy cow, and then they didn't have one. And she said, and Mama would sometimes get milk. It was very rare that she'd be able to get milk, but sometimes she could, and it was a real treat. And she said, and if we couldn't, then we just drank water. You know, we just didn't have anything. But she talked about, she could remember her mama going out there early in the morning to milk that cow, and something that was so, you know, important to them, and how exciting it would have been to just have milk. you know, and this would have been raw milk from a dairy cow, and how precious that would have been. And now it's like, well, we can go just buy milk by the gallon in the store. But, you know, sometimes I think in the name of progress, we've lost better things along the way. I've heard Papa say they had dairy cows and they had to milk them, and he hated it because he and his brothers would be responsible for before the morning school or whatever they, I guess, before, some of them drove the school bus, so they'd have to go before they drove the school bus, milk the cows, and they had to get down on in there in the mud, and they always got muddy and they always got milk on them, and they hated it. But there they were doing these things.
Right.
And so what was lost in all that? I tell you what I think was lost.
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
Is the idle time. If you're busy procuring your food and building a home and building a family, you're less likely to get off in the bushes
and the weeds where you're not supposed to
do
be.
XYZ that shouldn't be going on.
And then another thing, I mean, there's lots of things that I think are lost, you know, as we're thinking about the culture slipping out from under us, but the simple way of life, of living close to the land, but what that does for you mentally, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, did I ever say mentally? What that does for you. I mean, I wish y'all could be here. I mean, sometimes you are here in our videos, and that's why
you're here with us now.
You're here with us now. That's why we love making these videos. But Mom and Dad, we can see them a little bit, but I can hear the hoe hitting the rocks. So like, I knew they were gardening as soon as we turned on the video. And of course, this time of year, mid-May, everything is greening out. It's starting to get warm, and you can hear the birds and you can hear the creek, and there's just like this beautiful blanket of green, and some of the seedlings are coming up, and the potatoes are like up this high. And it's so incredibly peaceful. It's so peaceful. It's away from the rush and the push and the shove of the modern world. I mean, of course we're in the modern world, but making this video and talking about lamenting some of these old ways that are slipping away from us is because we want y'all to experience this, to know what that peace is like, to know.
And some of you do, because some of you are 2 or 3 times our age.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
Absolutely. And so that's another thing actually that brings me to the next point. It's very interesting. We've said this on the channel before, but our analytics, we have YouTube analytics that tell us the back side of the channel, tell us all about it. And our analytics say that 47% of our viewers are 65 and older. 29% are 55 and older. So we have a very small percentage of viewers who are our age, a tiny percentage. That's very interesting. You know, we are 28, we'll be 29 in September of filming this video in 2025. Very interesting that our viewers are all almost old enough to be our grandparents.
And I think that speaks volumes to this feeling that I have of just being like, I don't have any friends, and I don't have anything in common with anybody my age. And that's not me being mean about them. I'm not saying that,
No.
oh, I'm just so good, I can't get on my level. That's not what I'm saying.
What we're saying at all.
But
that adds to that like feeling of lament when there's people, and we felt like that, not to interrupt you, but we felt like that even when we were in elementary or middle school, definitely high school and college.
who wants to watch a gun smoke and break beans?
Yeah.
You know, and then go to bed at 8 o'clock and you know, wake up and we'll go to church and eat dinner at Sunday at Granny's. And it's when you said
just not having nothing in common with anyone, and that makes you feel sometimes just
isolated,
completely isolated and alienated.
And when you said earlier a simpler way of living, I think what that looked like is the Appalachian people. Now, especially the ones when progress moved on and we start looking at, you know, electricity and jobs outside the home, and you know, being able to spend less time on your food because now the grocery store has all of these food items for you. I think what that speaks to is the Appalachians being, I'm willing to live with less, I'm willing to be poor, I'm willing to be simpler, as long as that means I can have time for my family, as long as it means I have time to have my connection with the land, as long as it means I can live the life I want to live.
And of course,
then I'll just have less money.
Absolutely.
Then I'll live in a shack. I'd rather live in the cabin by the side of the road than to live in the mansion and give up all of this. And you know, that's still a thought process that I have. And I know that I'm still willing to do that, especially raising Ira. Of course, I live with my mom and dad, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes, even if that means having less of an income, even if that means having less affluence or less stuff, less opportunity, not the fancy vehicle, whatever it is, so long as I can get up on a Tuesday morning and take Ira to the garden. Yeah. If I can get up on a Wednesday morning, and dip his toes in the creek. If we can do our homeschool and then we can spend our time outside close to the land and gardening and hunting and fishing and all these things that I see as important, I think the Appalachian mindset was just that. We like living out here in our field and our shack, so long as we can do the things that are important to us. Because if we move to the city, we have to give those things up.
Yeah.
And again, there's nothing wrong with living in the city. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to hoe corn and
because
live in the dirt.
Because it takes all kinds, and we need the cities too. And that's the awesome thing, is that God makes everyone different. Not everyone wants to, live here and hoe corn and watch Gunsmoke and break beans and go to bed at 8 o'clock. Not everyone wants to do that. And that's cool, because that's the awesome thing too. There's so many different cultures besides our own that are just as valuable and rich, but we miss it. We feel like ours is slipping out from under us, and that deep reliance of the old Appalachian people of on the land and on the Lord and these simplistic ways.
It's all wrapped around the
We're
Lord.
having to fight harder and harder to hold on to that, because it feels like the industrialized, modernized world is just reaching in your pocket all the time trying to take it.
And I think, probably toward the closing of this video, that's the charge that we have.
Now what?
Now, as young Appalachian mothers, what do I do? Well,
now what?
It's my job.
What do we do to preserve the culture? What do we do to
hoe a row, break some beans, watch a little Gunsmoke, and individual family history of passing down stories. This is what your grandma did. This is what you never met your great grandpa, but this is who he was, and this is what he did. And here's his music, because that's another aspect. The Appalachian music still playing those
aspect for us.
Yeah,
Did I say that wrong? Aspect. Did I say that right?
Yeah, I know what you meant. Playing the Appalachian music, handing it down, and making sure that these boys grow up with an understanding. And when I speak to individual family, your own family heritage and culture, your family stories.
Yeah, it may not be Appalachian culture, so you need to share with your family your culture.
And we have to think, before we hop off this video, I want to thank our friend Walter, who's been studying into some of our family genealogy. Thank you, Walter, because this means so much to us. I did a little bit here and there, but then when I had Ira, of course, you just, you have to move on with stuff and prioritize your time. But and Walter's very, very smart and very good at this, so he's definitely been able to delve into stuff I never could have found. He's a real genealogy investigator, and he has found that, on both sides, that once our family came to America, and once they came here, they really just come to here, to not just Appalachia but Western North Carolina specifically, and stayed. And he was impressed by how long our ancestors had been here, that they just got here and they didn't migrate to other parts of the United States. And that's amazing, and that deep heritage to this place. Now, I love all Appalachia. I've seen Virginia. It's beautiful. I've seen other parts of it. I've seen Tennessee. I've seen
Georgia and
all over the place, and it's beautiful and I love it. But this place, and knowing that my family's been here for that long, then I feel an honor and almost what would you say, I feel like I owe them to stay here and to continue to do what I'm doing.
Yeah, and there's something very special about getting to live in the same holler, the same place that you were raised in, and being able to give the boys what we had. Your grandparents are next door, your aunt and uncle is next door, your community of elders, your community at church. It's very important. And then, of course, my husband's family is so important, so crucially, vitally important to me as well. Them getting to be a part of our life and my child's life. I'm just talking about this from like my perspective, but not wanting to leave anything out. So, lamenting the old ways a little bit, especially as we are raising our kids, it's becoming more evident and it's more on our mind. How are we going to preserve the culture? How are we going to pass it down? And I know a lot of our viewers here feel the same way. We get comments all the time of, you reminded me of how it was when I was growing up, and we love that. We love that community. So you have to drop us a comment below and let us know what you think. Yeah. We've got 2 baby monitors out here. We should probably go check them, and I would say the boys are still asleep, but in case they've woken up from their naps, we'll have to get them up and say, come to Appalachian school. That's right.
And one day it will be, we'll be going to school. It will be Katie and Corey's homeschool academy. So, I'm hoping, Lord willing, that's what it'll be. And we'll have Appalachian Hour, where we talk and discuss all things Appalachia.
That's right.
And in the planting months, Appalachia Hour will consist of garden slave labor. No, I'm joking. Have to just let them experience what we experienced. One more thing, and then we'll hop off here. When we were, I don't know, maybe 9, but it wasn't just 9, 10, 13. Whenever we were old enough, I remember when we would grow this big garden, Mom and Dad would get up real early and they'd come down here and they'd tell us, you better get up because it's going to be easier to hoe when it's, hoe a row when the sun's not in here yet. And so that's what we would do during the summer. We would get up and we would be responsible. Sometimes we'd split a row, sometimes we'd both do one, and then we were free to do whatever else we wanted to do after the garden chores were done. And then sometimes we would convene back to break beans, or Granny she'd call us and say, why don't you come out here and see me? And she'd get us to sit down and she'd give us something to eat, but she was really trying to bribe us to break beans.
Yeah.
And we would, so there'd be me and Corey and April and Granny all on one couch, and we would all have like a pot or a bowl to put our broke beans in. And actually there'd be one big pot that Granny was putting the stringed beans in. She wouldn't let us string beans. She was scared that we'd get ourselves hurt with a knife, and also somebody would be eating stringy beans. You couldn't trust us to get the strings out. And so she would do that, and then we would just break them until we were done. And Pat might be sitting in his chair, or he might be back down here doing something. And those memories, I wouldn't have had any of that had the garden not been the center of it, had we not been interested in growing the food and that sort of thing. So
absolutely. Well, we appreciate you joining us. Like we said, drop us a comment, and as always, God bless you, God keep you, and we'll see you on the next one.
bye. I figured I should say something too.